Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Deptula, Dean of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, and welcome to our Spacepower Forum. We're really pleased that Lieutenant General JT Thompson could join us today. As most of you know, General Thompson is the commander, U.S. Space Force's Space and Missile Systems Center, based out of Los Angeles Air Force Base. As a program executive officer for space, General Thompson manages the research, design, development, acquisition, and sustainment of satellites and their associated command and control systems. Prior to his current role, General Thompson was the commander, Air Force Lifecycle Management Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So welcome, JT, and thanks very much for making the time to join us today. What I'd like to do is start off by giving you an opportunity to make a couple of opening remarks on the stand-up of the new Space Systems Command, as well as your other top priorities and the critical challenges that your team is facing. So with that, over to you.
Hey, thanks so much, Dave, for that very nice introduction. And thanks, as always, to the whole Mitchell Institute team for the opportunity to speak to this audience today. I think this is the fourth or fifth time I've been able to do this while I've been in this job. And it's always great to not just interact with you and your team, but also with all the audience members, no matter whether it's in person or virtual. Also, kind of a shout out to Camilla Gunzinger and Lucas Ottenreed from your team for setting up the event and kind of orchestrating all the stuff that goes on in the background. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different than I've done in past times where I participate in this event. I'm just going to have some very brief comments, Dave, and then I really want to get to some Q&A, and I'm looking forward to discussing some of that stuff with you that you and I have kind of previously laid the foundation for, and then get to some audience questions as well. But in terms of just a quick update about what's going on in the Space and Missile Systems Center world, it's really hard for me to believe that it's already May, and so we're coming up on being, halfway through calendar year 2021. I'm incredibly grateful to all of our partners, many of whom are represented in the audience, I'm sure, who've worked with SMC over the past year and a half to persevere throughout the COVID-19 crisis, really helping us continue our mission of providing unparalleled space capabilities to joint warfighters and allies. Despite the challenges of the ongoing pandemic, we really had an incredibly successful 2020. We launched 7 different national security space launches and 1 small launch. We got AEHF-6, Advanced Extremely High Frequency 6 satellite into orbit. It's now completed the AEHF constellation and been operationally accepted by the user. We added 2 more space vehicles, GPS-3 satellites, to the PNT constellation. We launched with our mission partner, the DAF RCO, the X-37B space plane back into orbit. We didn't stop there with kind of routine launching and fielding kind of operations, though. We did outreach via new events like the Hack-A-Sat satellite competition, where we were able to develop some new relations with the public cybersecurity community. We really helped strengthen and make more resilient our networks and weapon systems. So that outreach was really incredible, and the pandemic did not deter that. We were able to award the National Security Space Launch Phase 2 contract on time with no protests to ensure the next 5 years to assured access to space. And while I'm talking about that source selection, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other ones, Protected Tactical SATCOM, Evolved Strategic SATCOM, the Air Force Army Anti-Jam Modem effort, the Enhanced Weather System efforts, all very successful awards during calendar year 2020. Organizationally, we stood up the SpaceWorks organization out here this past December. Dr. Roper approved that as a new front door for space sector startups to join us here at SMC for what kind of opportunities there might exist for entrepreneurial companies to work with the Space Force. And then we expanded existing efforts. Many of you are familiar with the Space Enterprise Consortium, or SPEC. We awarded a new management contract for that effort that includes a $12 billion ceiling and a 10-year period of performance. You'll all be happy to know that just this past month in April, we welcomed the 500th member of that consortium, meant to accelerate and award rapid prototyping contracts. We're very happy with that. We've seen really incredible growth in the space commercial sector that we need to take full advantage of. I hope I get to talk a little bit about that today. I think we need to go bigger and bolder on incorporating commercial space capabilities into the service. We also saw, kind of on the downside, increased development and testing of counter space systems by our adversaries, China and Russia. To compete in the space domain for the next decade, we really have to continue to refine our programs and our architectures in ways that allow us to both rapidly and efficiently partner with these new space startups and even some of our international allies. So I guess in terms of the last year, our adversaries didn't slow down, and really neither did we. We have another big year underway here in 2020. And as we start to get close to the second part of the year, my shout out to the NROL 82 crowd for their successful launch just a few weeks ago. That's, as all of you know, a really important collaboration between the National Reconnaissance Office and the Space and Missile Systems Center. And excuse me, we have 5 more national security space launches on the docket for this year, including SBIRS GEO-5, which is slated for next week, another GPS satellite later this summer, and multiple prototyping payloads later this year. It's not just launch, as I said before, but we've got a number of different crucial programmatic milestones in some of our major defense programs. And we have some really cool stuff going on with our international allies, like the QZSS hosted payload program, which I hope to talk about later with our ally in Japan. We've got the Space Systems Command coming along. That's a really lengthy topic, and I know that there's a lot of people in the audience interested in that, so I'm sure I'll get a question on that. So I'll cover any details on that. But getting that Space Systems Command stood up sometime this summer, once a commander is nominated and confirmed, I think is a really important milestone, and really bodes well for the future of space acquisition within the U.S. Space Force by continuing to collaborate with space acquisition organizations and bring them closer into the architectural collaborations that we have. I think that those partnerships will continue to pay huge dividends, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to speak about that and anything else you'd like to talk about today, Dave. So that's really all I have. Back to you, and let's get going on Q&A.
Yeah, look, JT, thanks very much for that context. And it's very clear from your opening remarks that COVID certainly didn't slow you or your team down. And congrats on all the great work that you and your team are doing in the space domain. So as you suggest, let's dig a little bit deeper into some of those topics that you raised. Following the unveiling of the idea of the Space Systems Command structure or organization last month, some have questioned just what makes SSC different from SMC 2.0 and how these changes help accelerate space acquisition. Could you talk to us a little bit about ways this new organization might help space go faster?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. The Space Systems Command, and this was all part of the rollout, really builds on the clean sheet approach that we took to the SMC 2.0 re-architecture or reorganization of the Space and Missile Systems Center. I think most of the people in the audience are tracking that effort started in early 2018, and we didn't declare ourselves fully operationally capable until, frankly, just before the pandemic. At the end of November of 19 is when we went FOC with the 2.0 re-architecture. Just as a reminder, and I'm not going to belabor this, but we flattened SMC. We established 3 new program executive officers to get decision-making authorities closer to our programs. We eliminated 3 levels of staffing, and we collapsed 20 different organizations down into 6 as part of 2.0. We realigned our major acquisition portfolios by stages of a program's life cycle, as opposed to the program's mission area. And we did that to help break down the stovepipes and foster communication and collaboration between programs in similar stages of development. We also created a portfolio architect office to help us develop a unified technical architecture across mission areas and integrate efforts between those mission areas. As we stand up the Space Systems Command, you should be tracking that we're planning to bring both the 30th and 45th Space Launch Deltas under the new Space Systems Command to better synchronize across the entire launch enterprise. As we build out the structure of that new command, we're utilizing new tools and processes, different authorities to enable better communication and faster execution across the enterprise. Something that maybe not a whole lot of people are tracking is last year, the Service Acquisition Executive did delegate to us something called HCA, or Head of Contracting Authority, for the U.S. Space Force. That was delegated to Ms. Joy White, who's here as my executive director. That HCA authority, having that at this level, has literally shaved weeks off of coordination and approval timelines for some of our major contractual efforts. We were able to remove an entire layer of staffing coordination requirements. And in only a few months, we've already seen that the delegation of this HCA is paying big dividends. Ms. White's deep understanding of the space mission really is enabling coordination for multiple projects in less than a day. So it's really a cool feature that we're taking advantage of. Our West Coast software factory, Kobayashi Maru teams, they've completely overhauled how we develop and acquire software applications. Just as one example of the type of work they're doing, I'll mention the JSPOC mission system, JSPOC or JMS replacement program, which we call Space C2. Many people are familiar that JMS was a 10-year waterfall style program management software program that cost nearly $1 billion and really didn't deliver on its promises. We incurred some really major operational risks, and we made the decision to cancel it and start again using the Space C2 effort and agile software development approaches. That team's been able to rapidly deliver new capabilities with really unprecedented levels of input from space operators. And so since the 2019 timeframe, Space C2 has delivered 8 operationally accepted applications to our operators with an average development time of 132 days. So, not 10 years, but 132 days to new incrementally delivered capability. We're also working digital engineering. I know everybody's been hearing a lot about that and the ecosystem that we're setting up. New forms of information sharing and collaboration, not just across the center, but with our external partners like the Space Warfighting Analysis Center, some of the other acquisition portfolios. We really feel like we're going to be able to link threat and system models, perform high fidelity digital test and evaluation, facilitate secure collaboration with industry and agencies outside of the DoD. It's a really remarkable capability that we're trying to build. And we currently have 3 different pathfinders leading the way on digital engineering practices here at SMC: the protected anti-jam tactical satellite, the evolved strategic satellite system, and something that we're calling combat bus. I talk a lot about the Space Enterprise Consortium, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think it's really important to highlight as we talk about moving into faster ways of doing business, that the Space Enterprise Consortium was started less than 4 years ago with a $100 million ceiling on that contract, and a 5-year period of performance. And less than 4 years later, we now have a revised Space Enterprise Consortium contractual vehicle that has a ceiling of $12 billion and a 10-year period of performance. We already have 500 members, 70% of which are non-traditional vendors like startups and small businesses, academic institutions. In FY21 alone, as we go through this year, we're currently pursuing 11 different rapid prototyping efforts worth about $1.5 billion to address challenges through spec on things like missile warning tracking systems, collecting real-time debris and meteorite data, software efforts, communications efforts. And so this Space Enterprise Consortium, where you're able to get on contract with a non-traditional vendor, a commercial organization in less than 90 days, is still gaining momentum and opening new paths to engage with those non-traditional companies and commercial organizations. We're really excited about this vehicle. And by the way, that's not just for Space and Missile Systems Center, that's for all of our DoD space acquisition partners. We're really fully cognizant that the threat posed by the actions of countries like Russia and China bear our watching, and the need to accelerate our programs and take full advantage of the booming commercial space sector is really paramount. The Space Systems Command gives us the right organizational structure to go fast, facilitate better outreach with industry, exercise new acquisition authorities, and continuing to build a culture of rapid innovation. That's why we went with the structure the way we did. And I am sure that we will incrementally improve it over the years to come.
Wow. Well, that's extraordinarily impressive. Staying a little bit on that same topic, but expanding the subject space, Space Systems Command is intended to bring unity of effort in the development and acquisition of space capabilities for warfighters. So that said, as you're well aware, DoD has many entities that conduct space R&D and establish requirements for space acquisition. In addition to the Space Force and the new Space Systems Command, there are also the other services, the NRO, DARPA, SDA, and so on and so forth. So with all these organizations operating in the same domain, how are you helping industry understand emerging warfighter requirements and the overall trajectory of national security space programs?
Yeah, Dave. So that's really the crux, is it? I love the concept of unity of effort, but sometimes it sounds a little bit too academic. I like how the CSO General Raymond refers to it as making sure everybody's rowing in the same direction. So as you know, and many of our industry partners know, we've always had a very deep and incredibly successful bilateral partnerships with many of the organizations that you mentioned there. Now we're working to have multi-level or multilateral partnerships with all of them at the same time. And one great way that we're trying to do that is the Program Integration Council, or the PIC. Other vehicles that we're using to try and get after that more robust and resilient multilateral work together is the Space Force Acquisition Council and the Space Warfighting Analysis Center that I mentioned earlier, the SWAC. And all of those efforts together are really moving us all in the same direction and working together. The PIC itself, the Program Integration Council, brings together leadership, acquisition leadership from the NRO, Space Development Agency, the Space RCO, the DAF RCO, Missile Defense Agency, and that we also have user representatives on the PIC that are represented by the Space Operations Command. And we use that pick to evaluate major program efforts, synchronize resources, really across the spectrum of our national security space plans and programs. It gives us a forum to address issues that we're all facing, develop strategies in tandem, which really directly helps our partners in industry understand who's doing what and who's focusing on which pieces of the larger picture or larger portions of the architecture. If you want to see a microcosm of what this collaboration really looks like, just, frankly, just take a look at my schedule this week. We have a monthly Program Integration Council scheduled for tomorrow on the agenda, although I can't give you some of the specifics because some of the stuff we're talking about tomorrow is classified, but we'll be reviewing a joint program, getting a status update on a joint program for the whole team that ourselves and the National Reconnaissance Office are working together. We're going to go through a number of different digital engineering examples and some of the mission partner digital engineering efforts. We've invited Space Force Headquarters, the CTIO office, Major General Krim Kreider, to join us for tomorrow to talk about that. We have some important classified joint testing kinds of capabilities to talk about, and a number of other things. It's just a great forum to address those things. But in addition to the PIC, I've had separate meetings this week, partnership discussions with the Missile Defense Agency on something that we're working with them, the Space Operations Command. Lieutenant General Bassett from DCMA will be here this afternoon to talk about a few things with me. And then on Friday, I've got a deep dive on one of our Air Force Research Lab Vanguard programs for resilient PNT. It's called the NTS-3 program. We also, as a PIC, provide regular support to the Space Acquisition Council. As you know, that's chaired by the acting Service Acquisition Executive, Darlene Costello. Participants, statutory participants in that forum, the Director of the NRO, SAF SP, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy, the CSO, and the Commander of U.S. Spacecom. And that forum is really overseeing, directing, and managing acquisition and integration of the DAF space systems to ensure integration across the national security space enterprise. They've been focused on high priority efforts like evaluating space architectures against threats. They've been helping us with the implementation of digital engineering across the enterprise, giving us access to other services and other partners who are doing digital engineering in a big way. And they're helping to push authorities down to the right level, typically the PEO level in our acquisition organizations. The other organization I mentioned earlier that I think is important to foot stomp from this unity of effort perspective is the SWAC. That's a leading edge capability that General Raymond is using as a centerpiece, or one of the centerpieces of his capability development framework. They're responsible for force design in the Space Force for the service. And that's really the operational architecture. SMC and soon to be the Space Systems Command leads the architecting and systems of systems engineering for the technical architecture, and ensuring that the things are allocated properly against specific programs of record. We're working closely with Andrew Cox and the SWAC to develop a process where SWAC, the Space Systems Command, the Space Operations Command, working with Headquarters U.S. Space Force, can collaborate and define architectures that really meet joint warfighting requirements. And I'm sure that at some point the Mitchell Institute will want to have Andrew Cox by to talk about SWAC in great detail. Regarding direct communication to industry that you mentioned there a minute ago, Dave, I'll just highlight that we stood up the SpaceWorks organization out here in LA to better facilitate communication with startups and integration of commercial technologies. And as I've mentioned before, we have successfully used the Space Enterprise Consortium to dialogue with the now over 500 members about specific needs and challenges we're facing. A great example of industry outreach coming up later this year is as I think many of our commercial SATCOM providers are tracking, where the service is putting its finishing touches on an enterprise SATCOM strategy. We're going to do that to provide some clarity to our partners, both in government and the commercial sector, and frankly, to our international partners about our vision for the future of SATCOM, how we're going to get after what General Raymond refers to as fighting SATCOM. That strategy should be completed later this summer, and we're looking to host an industry forum to provide a venue for our partners to share their thoughts on the strategy, as well as discuss their latest capabilities and future plans. So you can think of that as something like a teaming group where we're talking to all of the commercial SATCOM providers, and then an opportunity for one-on-ones afterwards. In addition to that Enterprise SATCOM Summit, we have multiple other forums and industry engagements coming up this summer. We have our second Space Force Pitch Day scheduled for the August timeframe. We have a Cross Mission Ground Summit. We have an annual Space Industry Days event later in the fall. We'll have, with our partners in AFCEA, we're having a first ever partnership industry day that we think will be very important. And we certainly are open to any other suggestions from industry on how we get our message out, how we communicate what we want and when we want it, how we listen to our industry partners. We're in kind of a special time kind of coming out of the pandemic, where we'd love to spend a little bit more face-to-face time, or maybe mask-to-mask is a better way to say it, time. And we're willing to devote some resources to figure out how to best interact with industry, even more than we already are, and how they can make sure that they know what we want and who they should talk to.
Well, JT,
I hope that scratched the itch there for you.
Yeah, well, you did a masterful job regarding the question of integration of effort across these disparate organizations with a hand in space. I compliment you on all the efforts that you've instituted in trying to bring everybody together. But I go back to Jay Raymond's the sort of analogy that you used earlier, to make sure all the boats are rowing in the same direction. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody was in the same boat? Ostensibly, that's why the Space Force, or one of the reasons why the Space Force was stood up. So I think that unless there's a much more aggressive action taken to consolidate some of those organizations underneath the Space Force, bureaucratic inertia is going to set in, and it's going to be more and more difficult to do that. But be that as it may, congrats on doing the best with what you got. Now, it was a wonderful segue too into what I wanted to ask you about commercial space, but you've done a pretty magnificent job in talking about that, in working to expand the acquisition of space services that are increasingly available in the commercial market. But is there anything else you want to add in that effort? If not, or after so, I got a question for you about the Commercial Satellite Communications Office.
Yeah, so let me. I think it's important to foot stomp commercial space, just maybe a little bit more, as I think everybody's tracking there's just an incredible amount of work and investment happening right now in the commercial space sector, and it's really crucial that we figure out how to successfully integrate commercial data and services into our architectures and concepts of operation. As I mentioned previously, we need to go bigger and bolder here in that using of commercial data and capabilities in order to go faster. I think it's essential to peer-to-peer competition that we leverage the commercial space sector. So we are, as I think everybody's following our architectural work in the service, really pivoting away from stovepipe systems and moving more towards what I would call enterprise-based solutions that utilize a mix of U.S. government, allied, and commercial capabilities. I'm really proud of what we've done so far, but for those that are, beating their shoe on a table about needing to do more, I absolutely agree with them that we've got to be able to make this transition as seamlessly as possible and as quickly as possible. The commercial satellite office that you mentioned earlier, commercial satellite communications office led by Claire Grayson, they're really doing an incredible job in the SATCOM area, procuring commercial satellite support services for the entire DoD. They're actually doing it for other federal organizations and even our international partners. Just to give you a sense of the scope that they're operating at, they're projected to spend a little over $800 million in FY22 on commercial SATCOM services, as well as some tactical ISR and PNT services. They've got a key RFP that's coming out later this year that I know industry is very excited about. Moving on to weather, lots of commercial weather monitoring resources are available to DoD today. So we're working with the operational communities in both the Air Force, the Space Force, and other services to really understand their needs in different operational situations and scenarios where they may need higher fidelity data than is currently available off the shelf. We have several studies currently underway on those data needs, and those studies are really being done at the strategic, operational, and the tactical level. And SMC is really active participants with the tri-agency working group between DoD, NASA, and NOAA. We have an open dialogue on weather needs across the U.S. government. I think there's plenty of potential for additional commercial services in the weather area. Space domain awareness is also a growing area, and if you want to extend that to space traffic management, you can. We're looking to purchase and utilize commercially available SDA data to assist with a range of tasks, including characterization and threat processing. Here at SMC, our unified data library, which we created, is really a fantastic example of technology that facilitates the integration of commercial services into the SDA mission, enabling data to pass between commercial providers and operational users in new and expedient ways. Another benefit of the UDL is the SDA marketplace, which I know many of folks in the audience have heard about, which allows us to directly purchase and pay for commercial data and services flowed into the UDL and then leveraged for military space operations. It's a marketplace model where commercial vendors can offer their digital wares for operators to check out and select from. Lots of commercial services, I think, will be part of joint all-domain command and control and ABMS efforts going into the future. We got to have those commercial services because it increases our options for both persistence and resiliency. And then finally, I mentioned it just a few minutes ago, but commercial imagery from space isn't new. But what is new is the breadth of access and the reduced cost for those services. Growth in commercial launch providers has really greatly reduced the cost to the access to space. And that's really opened up the skies to many new providers with both EO, IR, and synthetic aperture radar imagery in the commercial sector that our military and intelligence professionals can use. They've got a lot of different requirements for accuracy, resolution, and timeliness. So integrating commercial ISR assets into the space portfolio reduces the burden on some of those purpose-built intel space systems that we know so well from ourselves and our partners, and really, gets answers into the hands of warfighters in tactically relevant timelines. I guess the only other thing I'd say is the commercial market's really keenly aware, I think, of those opportunities in this domain, and they're presenting technologies to many of us, such as rapid downlinks, onboard processing, tipping and queuing, imagery as a service. It really drives a paradigm shift in speed, access, and relevance of data in the tactical battle space. As a further example of that kind of more commercial work that we're doing, I'll just highlight that over the past 3 years, initially under the leadership of Dr. Will Roper and continuing to today. We've really championed the innovative use of small business innovative research, phase 2 and phase 3 programs to help facilitate rapid prototyping and procurement. And so we've awarded more than $250 million to small businesses for phase 3 efforts in 2020. And that was 1,000% increase from what we did in 2019. So we're getting after commercial capabilities that we can transition into the defense sector and help those commercial entities lower their barriers to entry by using vehicles like SPEC and Space Pitch Days, investing more, and then helping them through getting them all the way to phase 3 SBIRs, helping them kind of cross that valley of death, if you will, into new programs of record. So integrating commercial capabilities and services just isn't an acquisition problem. There are some challenges here, and I'll just foot stomp that, given the way that we do the PPBE process and how we do budgeting in the department, how we build our requirements, and we do all of those things on multi-year timelines, we really need to consider new pathways to rapidly transition to new business models and get after some of these commercial capabilities so that we can get them to the warfighter sooner rather than later. It's a dilemma. It's not an acquisition reform problem. It's not an acquisition problem. It's a whole of the department problem to try and access these commercial things on relevant timelines. We have a lot of engagements with industry. They have a ton of sharp folks who love to experiment, and they want to get after new ways to integrate commercial capabilities and capacities into our architecture. But under the current defense procurement, PPBE, and requirements models, we don't have as much flexibility as we should with money or requirements to pursue some of those projects. So that dialogue is going to continue, but I think what you'll also see from the Space Force in coming months is, hey, here's some help that we need in order to be able to get after some of these commercial capabilities. We have lots of great ideas walking in our door, but we don't have necessarily a set aside pot of money and a requirement that addresses some of those good ideas. And I think it's inherent upon the department, if they want to get after more commercial, to get after some different pathways to do it.
Yeah,
I hope that addressed your question.
It's just not more commercial, it's the rapid piece.
Yeah.
And man, you're just so spot on. I just have to tell you, as you're talking there about commercial, and you mentioned the point that, hey, commercial imagery is not that new, but guess what? Commercial SIGINT is, and even commercial imagery that, 3 years ago would have been TSSCI is now available to anybody with a credit card and access to the internet.
Yeah.
I would have given a year's pay as the planner for Desert Storm to have access to the commercial imagery that's available today. And then, 10 years later, as the director of the Air and Space Operations Center in Operation Enduring Freedom. Yeah. I mean, the access that's available today is absolutely incredible. And so thanks for that perspective and trying to encourage the monolithic great center of institutional inertia that exists in the Department of Defense, because that's our biggest threat today. It's not China, it's the bureaucracy in DOD. Okay, with that, let's move overseas. So what do you see as the role of international partnership?
Hey, Dave,
Yeah.
Before we go on to the next question, let me just highlight, I probably should have also mentioned that as we transition Claire Grayson's organization, the Commercial SATCOM Communications Office, over into the Space Systems Command, we're looking at re-rolling that organization. I'd call it a midterm vision at this point, into a commercial space solutions office. So that we're not just focusing in on SATCOM, we're focusing in on all of those other mission areas like weather and tactical ISR. We want to assess the commercial marketplace, take advantage of the speed of need, if you will, aggregating buying power from across the department, leveraging a working capital fund if we can do it, and then putting in place capabilities to rapidly form service level agreements with our customers. We think there's some really smart procurement things that we can do in that realm, and expanding the scope of that office is one of those things that we're going to prioritize.
And you're doing it in the right way. You're taking an effects-based approach to what the mission of that office ought to be. You're not zeroing down into telling them how to choke chickens. You're giving them the objective and then letting them capitalize on what commercial industry provides. So my hat's off to you. We need more folks to pervade and break down the bureaucratic walls that exist inside the five-sided wind tunnel. Anyway, I digress. So back to overseas. You've talked magnificent, given us great insight into what you're doing with the commercial opportunities. What do you see as the role of international partnerships in the future of space acquisition?
Yeah, Dave. So just like commercial is exploding right now, I think allied partnerships or international partnerships are exploding as well in terms of a untapped resource that we must take advantage of. Our partners today play a critical role in increasing our resilience to and deterrence of hostile and unsafe activity in space, and they really help us cement strategic relationships around the world. Many of our friends and allies around the world are developing their own national civil and military space programs, and they're helping grow their own domestic commercial space sectors as well. Just as a small example of some of the international work that we were able to do in 2020, you may have heard of International Space Pitch Day, which we ran in November with our friends in the United Kingdom. We awarded 10 small businesses from the UK, Australia, the US, and India, small efforts to capitalize on innovations and some creative solutions that they presented at that pitch day. This past March, just a couple of months ago, the winners of that International Space Pitch Day, I guess I should probably say the successful offerers, showcased their progress in some cutting edge areas like blockchain, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. We've really got a tremendous amount of interest from other host countries around the world to participate in the next International Space Pitch Day in 2022. It's a relatively small effort. It's relatively small dollars, but we're seeing huge impact from it, right? We're working a dedicated innovation MOU with a number of our partners to open the aperture more for different countries to engage with us in these and other kinds of innovation-focused efforts. It's just really exciting. On a bigger scale, beyond something as simple as an International Space Pitch Day, you may have read back in December, General Raymond signed an MOU with Japan to support the QZSS program to host a pair of U.S. payloads on 2 Japanese satellites. I'm really pleased to report from a results perspective that we sent a team, SMC sent a team to Japan in April, and they were able to conduct some very successful interface verification testing with our payloads and the Japanese satellite simulators. That keeps us on track to deliver our payloads in calendar year 2022 for QZSS launches in 23 and 24. In addition to strengthening the orbital ties, if you will, between nations, we've also been able to realize some big time cost savings with our allies and some speeding up the process in terms of delivering operational capability. We've been able to do that particularly in the SATCOM. Just to give you one example, we have 7 allied partners, Belgium and the United Kingdom most recently, contributing a combined $440 million to our WGS-11 program. That helps fund the cost of launch, resiliency efforts, sustainment, upgrades to ground systems over the next few years. And so when Congress gave us the funding to build more WGS satellites, we took an innovative approach and developed a solution that'll provide, instead of 2 more build-to-print WGS satellites, we decided to build a single satellite with double the total operational capacity of previous WGS satellites. I won't go into all the details, but the WGS-11 vehicle will have advanced digital beamforming, greater bandwidth, and a massive increase in the number of channels that it's able to access. And in large part, we were able to help pay for that with our international partners. International partnership isn't new to WGS. I think everybody is familiar with our partners combined to over $1 billion of support to procure WGS-6 and WGS-9. And so the WGS-11 program is really just continuing that tradition. I won't go into details, but everybody should be tracking the Enhanced Polar System recapitalization, which is our partnership with Space Norway and the Norwegian Ministry of Defense to host a couple of payloads on 2 Norwegian polar satellites for Arctic comm purposes. By partnering, we were able to save $900 million because we weren't building free flyers and didn't have to launch our own free flying satellites. And we're getting operational capabilities to our warfighters years earlier than if we built our own satellites going forward. Here at SMC, for the last couple of years, we've had a foreign liaison officer from the United Kingdom. He's going to be replaced this summer. We're getting a new one. We're also having an engineer and scientist exchange program, a German officer join our team out here. We're having a consulate day later this year where all of our partners, West Coast consulates here in Los Angeles and up in San Francisco, are going to get together here when we can go face to face, and we're going to discuss some more partnering opportunities. And we're exploring international partnership in space acquisition partnerships with Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Chile, Argentina. It's just amazing. Every time I hear General Raymond talking about the partnership efforts that we've been able to lead for the Space Force writ large, it's just really exciting. And you know, if the global space economy is going to grow as it's expected to, you know, like $1.3 trillion by 2040, then we've got to be able to take advantage of these international partnerships over the next few years to mutual advantage of ourselves and our allies.
Well, that's great, JT. I tell you what, I want to leave some time for our listeners. So let's wrap up this session. And JT, thanks again for your insightful comments in sharing your really valuable perspectives in this brave new Space Force venture. You're going to see more in this regard from the new Mitchell Institute Spacepower Advantage Research Center that's now under the direction of the Honorable Matt Donovan. So stay tuned. Now, as an alert to our listeners, our next Aerospace Nation event is Tuesday, May 18th, when I'll be hosting DARPA's Dr. Tim Grayson and Mitchell's own Heather Penny for the virtual release of our new report, Building an Agile Force, the Imperative for Speed and Adaptation in the U.S. Aerospace Industrial Base. So your comments, JT, on needing to move faster are very appropriate, and we continue to attempt to beat down the walls of change or resistance in that regard. So
Dave, thanks for your efforts in that regard, and thanks. We're really looking forward to working with the new space team, if you will, there at AFA. We love you, but we also are very interested in interacting with the Mitchell Institute and some of the new players that you have in town there going forward. We're very excited by it. So thank you.
You bet. We brought on some space professionals and look forward to expanding our efforts in that regard. So right now we're going to open this session to questions from the audience who've been listening to the conversation. And let's jump right in here. When I call on you, please announce who you are and your organization. And of course, no introduction is necessary for Sandra Irwin. So let's go to Sandra first.
Hi, General Thompson. Good morning, and thank you for this overview today. So I wanted to pick up on the use of tactical ISR, which which you mentioned is one of the initiatives. General Raymond was on a talk this morning with the Jim McAleese organization, and he said to be on the lookout for a GMTI program. Can you give us anything on, is this SMC doing this? Is this a new program? What are we going to see as far as GMTI? Thank you.
Hey, so Sandra, I would love to provide you complete detail and talk to you more about that, but I don't like getting out in front of the chief. So if General Raymond said be on the lookout, then I'm going to stay on the same message and say be on the lookout for it. It's coming, and I think when you see it, you will be. Well, it gets after a number of things that we've been talking about today, including some things that we haven't talked about today, like being able to declassify things and talk about efforts that are already underway. With respect to our commercial solutions office and that idea or that eventual new rolled organization, they'll be primarily focused in on procuring services for the DoD, combatant commanders, other agencies that need space capabilities. I'm pretty sure the GMTI kind of stuff that General Raymond was talking about is more of a purpose-built system, and we look forward to sharing the details with you in the future.
So can we say for sure that tactical ISR is available commercially, and you believe that you can get some type of capability commercially right now?
Yeah, so we know that there are many small businesses, commercial enterprises, startups, entrepreneurial ventures, including some small businesses or medium-sized businesses that already have that kind of capability. And we're confident that we can procure, just like some of our mission partners have, that data in a commercial way. The challenge is, as I mentioned earlier, is creating the funding streams, identifying the requirements. As you begin to build in commercial solutions, services, for lack of a better way to say it right now, into the enterprise, you have to. You want to be able to leverage commercial investments, technology, kind of the know-how of the engineering teams in the commercial sector, any goods that they have and things like that. But you also have to avoid creating critical dependencies with commercial services that may or may not be there when, for instance, you enter a phase of conflict that commercial services just can't support. You don't want to introduce, I guess a good way to say it is, unnecessary operational risk. What I think our responsibility here is, from a commercial solution standpoint, is kind of develop the soup to nuts ways of the different business models associated with how you access those commercial services. So what are the contractual agreements? Everything from FAR Part 15 contracting all the way to service level agreements, craft-like relationships, and things like that. I think the key here is, what's the requirement? How do we build the business deal? And then how do we fund it so that we can integrate services better into our architecture, but not make it a single node failure point for some critical element of the architecture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's turn to Courtney Albin.
Hi, yes. Thanks, General, for taking the time today. I appreciate it. I wanted to ask about progress that SMC is making on developing requirements and moving forward with a national space test and training range. I know there's a 5-year plan in place, but I was wondering if you could give us any more kind of details on near-term milestones. And then just to tack on to that, for the last couple of years, DOT&E has recommended that there be just a greater investment in space tests infrastructure in a range like this. Are we going to see that in FY22? I know you can't go into detail, but when are we going to see kind of greater financial investment in that?
Yeah, so Courtney, that's a great question. We have been working very closely with Space Force staff, the Space Force test and evaluation team over the last couple of years on a number of different elements of space test. Who's going to have operational test authority? Who's going to have developmental test authority? How are we going to put together the test team within the U.S. Space Force? Are we going to take a kind of a serial approach? Or are we going to do more of a combined DT OT approach, which, by the way, that's exactly what we're going to try and do. We're calling it integrated test, which is a portion DT and a portion OT. But underlying all of that, how are we going to test new systems so that they can be fielded and then incrementally approved over their life cycle, is this National Space Test and Training Range. We absolutely have to get after that. And it's going to be a shared responsibility across the Space Force between the Space Operations Command, the eventual STARCOM, and the Space Systems Command. What we're going to do in Space Systems Command is establish a program office for that National Space Test and Training Range. And then we're going to get after building the capabilities that we need to be able to adequately test from both a DT and an OT perspective our space systems that will field over the next decade. So I can't really give you the gory details of what's in the 22 budget, but I can guarantee you that between myself and other senior leaders in the Space Force, we have prioritized that training, that range, and we will get after it just exactly as the DOT&E folks have recommended.
Okay, here are a couple, JT, from the chat dialogue. This one's from John Bennett. First, thanks for your leadership at SMC and your outreach to industry. As you may recall, the Appropriations Committee introduced a commercial SATCOM program element and provided $43 million in 21. Could you help us understand the Space Force and Air Force position in FY22 and beyond, especially in light of pathfinders and pilots your team has led, like FMI, EMNC, et cetera?
Yeah, so that program element is very important to us. And in partnership with Claire Grayson and the Commercial Satellite Communications Office and the portfolio architect here at SMC, which we'll call the Space Systems Architect when we form up the Space Systems Command, we're planning to continuing to take advantage of pathfinders, pilots, and different ways to try and integrate what General Raymond refers to as his fighting SATCOM strategy. When we roll out our enterprise SATCOM strategy later this summer, you will see details of how we plan to do that kind of work. Maybe not specifically by company, by feature, by capability, but how we plan to roll out new capabilities, test, experiment, demonstrate those capabilities over time.
Okay, quick one from Robert Montague. Man, Robert, I'm sorry if I messed up your last name, but JT, great point on the access to commercial and allied ISR. Will the Title 10 authorities be allowed to get this ISR data in a timely fashion moving forward to the folks who need it?
Yeah, that's Robert, that's a fantastic question, and something that we're definitely going to have to prioritize. I hope that we will be able to do that. And I know that Major General Leah Lauterbach, our Space Force S2, is also very concerned about that and working those issues as we go. We know that other entities within the U.S. government are able to access those kinds of things. And I think under Title 10, we should be able to access those things as well, and provide that kind of service to combatant commanders. But we definitely need to make sure that we're deconflicted with what other portions of the government are doing.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for that, JT. And I'll just say, if they don't, the planners are just going to whip out their credit cards, grab their personal laptops, and get the data themselves. So we've come to the end of this Spacepower Forum. A big thanks again to General JT Thompson, to you, JT, and to our audience, from all of us here at the Mitchell Institute and the Spacepower Advantage Research Center. Have a great aerospace power kind of day. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody. And have a great rest of your week out here.
See you.